watching The Sham Unveiled with Stacy Suniga. Thank you for being here. I have a couple of special guests joining me today. They are the chair and the first chair of the Colorado District 8 for Congress. So I'd like to welcome Deb. Thank you for being here. And also Gil Reyes. Thank you for being here.
Thank you
So
for having us.
great. Okay, so CD8, we had one of the closest races last year. Uh, and Democrats ended up losing the seat. They won the seat first time around. It's a very new, let me give some history. It's a very new district for Colorado, in fact, the newest. And first election, Yadira Caraveo won. We had a Democrat in that office. That seat runs every 2 years. Had another election last year, 2024, razor thin margins. Republicans took the seat. So I have Gil Reyes actually on speaker because we were having some technical problems getting him on the camera. But Gil, thank you for being with us.
Well, thank you for the invitation.
So what can you tell us about CD8 as far as we'll get into what we think might have happened, but right now, currently, what's going on with the Congressional District 8?
Well, it's like you said, we did lose the seat last year, and Caraveo was the former congressperson, and she did lose, like you said, by a razor-thin margin. And since this year started, we now have 5 candidates, including Representative Caraveo. We've got State Representative Manny Rutinel, State Representative Shannon Bird, State Treasurer Dave Young, and former CEA President Amy Baca-Ollard. It's going to be quite a primary, and there's rumors there may be more jumping into the race. It's become a free-for-all. As you said, the district is brand new. It was created 4 years ago during the congressional reapportionment, which is by Constitution has to be done to reapportion the population. And as Colorado is a growing state, we secured a new congressional district after a pretty contentious hearings on the reapportionment. District is very unique, in my opinion, because we have a combination of urban, suburban, commercial, and agriculture. The population, we do have 40% Hispanic, and I think that 40% is an undercount. I think there's more. We do need to do more voter registration. I think that was part of it, but I think one of the reasons we lost the seat last year was disinformation that was put out. Now, Ms. Caraveo did do some votes that were not well received by the community, I mean the Hispanic community, but also the agricultural community rather. But it is a winnable district. We were told when the district was first created that a Democrat could not win, because looking at the statistics, however, through a lot of hard work, we did win the race by approximately 2,000 votes. So if anybody ever says my vote doesn't count, show them the results from District 8. Caraveo lost by approximately 1,200 votes, which is less than 1%. So the district is it's very unique. The Hispanic population within Weld County is primarily in Weld East Greeley, and the Hispanic population in Adams County is in Commerce City, Brighton, North Glen, and Thornton. So, and it's growing even more every day. However, due to the current immigration rates, some of our population is hiding. They don't want to get registered to vote. And I'm concerned that that may affect voter turnout.
I agree. I think that voter registration is important, but right now, under the Trump administration, it's just a fear-based tactic that they're using, of course, to keep power. Well, not only fear-based tactics, but also I believe they are stretching their powers to turn us into an unconstitutional country. And right now, everyone's been nail biting and really cheering on our judicial system, because that's the only entity that has been putting a burden on Trump to get his agenda done. And Deb, I wanted to ask you as well. You sit as first chair, and I know you were active in the last election as far as, a working party here in Weld County. What's your perspective about what happened last year?
Thank you, Stacy. I believe, in my opinion, I think that the previous representative, like Gil mentioned, some of the votes pandering to the Republicans and a lot of the things that she did. For instance, with the county commissioners, we have an airport here in Greeley where they received a lot of money from her, thinking that helping them out might win her votes. None of the Republicans were going to vote for Carabeo, which is unfortunate because while she was doing that and getting information from Washington to, pander to that side, it didn't work. She lost her base, and we fought very, very, very hard for her to get that back. You can't come in July and expect to win in November when you have a seat that, is 2 years. You can't forget about them for a year and a half and then come back the last part of the election or last part of the year before the election and think that you're going to win. We ran the Harris Walls campaign out of our home for the last 2 months of the election, and at every turn, you were very prominent in that with being one of the trainers and us, pushing the Caraveo literature, putting it on top so people could know, educating those people that came into our home when we were doing the trainings to let them know, this is important. This is, we fought so hard. You and Gil referenced when it was part of the redistricting, testifying to keep, to get this seat was very important. And I think the loss, it hit me very, very dear because we worked so hard to get it and then we lost it within the first 2 years. It takes boots on the ground. It takes everybody working together. It takes our communities. We increased the vote in Will County for the Democrats, but we lost Adams, and I think that's what hurt the most is 2,500 people stayed home, because they were hurt, of what some of the votes that Caraveo had done. And I think we need to take a hard look at what our strategy, and I know we're not going to speak strategy, but what we're going to be doing, in the next election, because we need to get that back. And again, it's going to take all of us. We do have a little sliver of Larimer County that we need to make sure that those individuals in Berthoud are educated. So it all comes down to the education piece of what our party needs to do. Both parties need to work on inside themselves, because we can't have Democrats fighting Democrats. Like Gil said, right now we have 5 people running for the seat. That's incredible. And if we get more people running, they're all going to need to take a look at themselves and decide who is going to be best to beat Gabe Evans. It's not about, it's not about gender. It's not about, it's not being a portfolio, or I call them portfolio politicians. They're in it for themselves. This is about our community. This is about Will County. This is about Adams County. This is about Larimer County. It's about Greeley, Brighton, Fort Lupton, those constituents, which Gil said is we have a majority of Latinos in those areas. We have to educate those people and make them not afraid so we can have the representation that we deserve.
Right. You referring to Caraveo's votes that really were a turnoff to her base was really kind of detrimental, because I was there and pushing for Yadira to be front and center when we sent out people to walk and knock doors. But we did have people come and support Yadira Caraveo from all over the state. And part of that is because this last election was probably one of the most important in my lifetime, because we were running against Trump. And Gabe Evans, I thought then, was a prolific liar in his ads. That's a turnoff. You know that I run a nonprofit, a Latino Coalition of Will County, and our goal is to edify and support Latinos in politics. Although we're not a monolith, this is my organization is nonpartisan. By far, Latinos are not a monolith. But the first race that we had in 2022, we did increase the Latino vote here, especially in Will County, like Gil said. This is a large part of CD8 where residency is Latino. But we had a libertarian in that race. And Gil, I want to ask you, how effective do you think having that third party was to help us gain that seat that first time?
I would agree that it drew the ultra-conservative MAGA votes away from the Republican vote, and it did give us that slim margin. It was similar to what occurred back in 1992 when you had Ross Perot jump into the presidential race and drew votes away from George H. Bush so that Bill Clinton was able to win. It was within Adams County, Ross Perot actually drew more votes than George Bush, the Republican. So I believe that the third party vote did draw enough that Representative Caraveo was able to win. Without that third party, where the Republicans and the liberal or the other party, they had an agreement that they would not run on a candidate, so they got their votes back, and that's how Representative Caraveo was defeated. So the focus has to be to increase voter turnout to secure the seat for the Democrat. And I believe it can be done, whether it's Representative Caraveo or one of the other 4 or 5 or 6, the nominee, it can be done. We just have to get a better job of communicating what the Democratic Party stands for. As you said, the Hispanic vote is not a monolith. There are approximately, within District 8, there's approximately 20,000 Salvadorans. And when they hear that term socialist, from their escaping from El Salvador, where socialism is repressive, is more fascist than a true socialism category. So the minute they hear socialist, they vote against it. And the Republican Party was able to use that tactic very well in Florida and in southern Texas. So we need to communicate better as to what the Democratic Party stands for. Women's rights, minority, public education, public health, which is a tremendous issue within the 8th Congressional. We have, I believe it's approximately 72,000 people within the 8th CD that are going to lose Medicaid with this new big, beautiful bill.
Oh, no.
And that includes women, children, and elderly. So unfortunately, our mortality rate may be going up.
So I have actually I've had access on 2 occasions to talk with Representative Gabe Evans. And on both occasions, he claimed he's supporting Medicaid. He wants to fight for it, blah, blah, blah. And even on immigration, we're only deporting people that are causing problems here. They're committing crimes, they're the bad people. We are not coming over after agricultural, which obviously I don't think that's true. This big, beautiful bill put more money into immigration raids to get people out. And right now, President Trump is not happy with the deportation rates, and ICE has been ordered to deport 3,000 people a day. So he's looking at numbers, right? And we know that they have already deported people that are not criminals. They're here, hardworking people who've committed to a life in America, have contributed to our economy. But that doesn't, Trump doesn't care about that. He just wants to see the numbers go up so that he can act like in Doge, they act like they had savings, like he can act like he got rid of all of these people when in fact, I think more good people are going to be deported. And Gabe Evans voted for this big, beautiful bill. It's just hands down gave his approval. And there is talk out there that he was the deciding vote. So now, all his rhetoric about wanting to save Medicaid and wanting to help all of these farmers keep their labor really kind of seemed disingenuous. And I did tell him that the last time I saw him. And I said, it's disingenuous of you to say that you're just deporting criminals when here we are witnessing Trump give pardons to convicted criminals, to let them out on the street. We saw that at the insurrection people. Blanket pardon. I don't care where you are, but if you're in jail or what you did, if you're in jail because of me, you have my blessing and you are free. And so we've recently seen some gang members get that same pardon. People who've done some heinous acts and then gone out. Some have gone out and committed acts and are back in jail. So, he's definitely pardoning criminals and also letting families of criminals enter into the country. And so all of that is just like he's talking out of both sides of his ass. And so I am wondering, and Deb, I'll let you respond quickly first, that I am wondering if Gabe's votes are going to make a difference in this election, because though we have almost an even number of Republican and Democrats, we also have independents in this community that perhaps I would say some aren't happy with the way things are going. So Deb, what do you think that with Gabe's voting record, how is that going to affect this upcoming race next year?
Well, Stacy, I think that the education piece, we need to educate those that aren't as, that don't watch politics. I mean, a lot of people have turned off their televisions because it's just a disparaging thing to watch. We have to make sure that we track his votes, make sure that we have, what we see as detriment to our communities, and educate those individuals in all. I mean, everybody needs to be educated, but CD8 the most. Like Gil said, 72,000 people may lose their Medicaid. What's that going to do? I mean, look at the little girl and you talked about the deportation, the 4-year-old little girl with cancer. I didn't see her, selling drugs or anything like that, but she was deported back to Mexico and could possibly die because she couldn't get the treatment she needed in Mexico. That's why her family brought her here, and now she's back there. I think, like I said, if we watch what he's doing, we make sure we keep record of it, we make sure that we tell our communities, our constituents within CD8, because that's mine and Gil's priority is CD8, but all across. That's what we have to make sure that they understand. I mean, he's already right now running an ad with a elderly gentleman saying that he's taking care of our senior citizens. That's not true. I worry about my parents every day. My mom is diabetic. I worry about her insulin. My dad has, heart difficulties. And with him, thank goodness he's with the VA. But I mean, how long do we know that if Trump's not gonna take out it's scary because every time you turn on the television, you don't know what's gonna happen. But it's leadership like us, like Gil and I and you, going out there, knocking on the doors, doing everything we can, the town halls, different things to make sure that our community knows what's happening so we can gain that seat back.
Yeah, exactly right. This is not a time to be sitting down. We need to be boots on the ground and, like you said, educate people. And really, Trump is if he's a king of anything, he's a king of spin. He tells his MAGA people that the sky is purple and they believe that, that the grass is orange and they believe that. And
One
so,
thing I
yeah, go
Sorry,
ahead.
Stace. One thing I want to say, Stace, is when I say educate our community and our constituents and everything, our people are not, or, the constituents of CD8, they are not dumb people. They're not, they're educated. It's just getting this other piece to educate them, to make them aware of the situation and their surroundings around them. I mean, for instance, look at this weekend. The king is going to do his own military parade of $43 million in what it's going to cost with getting the military and telling the military to shoot them in the protesters in the leg. I mean, that information has to get out and distributed to our communities because you're right. He's trying to act like a king and it's going to hurt our people. So that's another thing we have to let them know. This is not okay. This is why we need to take our seat back. We'll see what Gabe says as far as if he's agreeing with Trump on shooting the protesters. I mean, it's a scary time we live in, but like you said, we can't sit back anymore. We can't sit back and we can't be, at ease with what's happening. We have to be out there and doing the hard work. I mean, with Gil and I together, we make probably one person with our health. But we're not sitting back and not doing anything. We are going to be those leaders that we need to get out there and including all of our areas and, including Larimer County, because I don't want them to be forgotten. I mean, people think that some individuals in the state think that Weld County doesn't matter. It does. Adams County matters. Larimer County matters. And we're going to show them at the polls, at the ballots that we do matter and we'll take this seat back.
And that is such a ridiculous statement to say that Larimer County and Weld County don't matter. And I know, and I'm going to take a liberty to say that we've heard that from the Colorado State Chair. We've learned recently that he is not going to be funding any money in Weld County, which hurts anybody running because you need vote in Weld County, to win. So putting Weld County aside by the Colorado Democrat leader is ridiculous, and I dare say, bordered on fraud and I don't know what else, but it's definitely not a good look and not a good plan. But you talked about the Latinos getting more education out. And so, Gil, I want to ask you, what happened last time? I mean, we saw Trump as president for 4 years, and we had, a pandemic. Thousands and thousands of people died because he was slow to act and really didn't give a shit. And we also saw that, everyone thinks that we have this great economy. I kind of think of that telephone game where you can be, you pass a sentence down the line and then at the end of the sentence, it's changed into something different. I think the memory of people who voted for Trump was kind of like that. It kind of changed in their minds. And we witnessed his being an asshole, actually, just for himself, not um, for the people. And that's why, and I've said this before on this podcast, that's why I was so elated when Biden won. Not that Biden was my choice, but damn it, he wasn't Trump. If it had been Kermit the Frog running against Trump, I would have voted for Kermit the Frog because I knew what he was going to do. And we're seeing that now. So Latinos really believe that Trump was their savior. Lots of Latinos voted for Trump. Right now, he's still among Latinos has a favorable rating of over 50%. Can you explain that? What the hell are they fucking seeing? That maybe we don't.
They're believing the apprentice BS, that he was this great financial genius, that he's a great businessman. His father gave him several $1,000,000 to start his businesses, and he even lost that. The man has been bankrupt 6 times. Now, they'll say, well, that was the business that went bankrupt. It wasn't him personally. That's because he insulates himself so he can't be touched. He's left our people on the East Coast that have construction companies penniless because he will refuse to pay them. And he says, take me to court. But that information doesn't get out. His niece, Mary Trump, wrote a book about the family, and he's a complete narcissist, borderline personality. He doesn't care about anybody but himself. It's their fault.
Right.
We saw Mexicanos in LA get rounded up in the 20s and 30s and put in boxcars, and whether it was anybody who was undocumented or a Mexican who was an American citizen or American citizen born, they were put in those boxcars and transported all the way to Mexico City and dumped because it was their fault that the economy wasn't doing well. William the Great, newspaper magnate, used the Mexicans to generate newspaper sales. And he funded the railroad cars to be taking Mexicans and Americans to Mexico City. He funded that. So we have these oligarchs now, as we call them, the Koch brothers, probably good old Elon Musk. They poured millions of dollars to elect the city because they know he can be bought. He set the price already. Like you said, he's pardoning people. You have a meeting with him, you pay him in crypto because it can't be traced, and he'll pardon whomever you want pardoned. Right. But he's putting women and children and hardworking men and hardworking women in detention camps, is what I call them. I mean, they're nothing more than concentration camps waiting to be transported. He's violating court orders. I hope that the Supreme Court can get him to change, but I doubt it because the way he's packed the Supreme Court. But the lower courts, they are standing up to him, including Trump appointees. But I would agree with you, Stacy, in terms of education. We have a very uneducated population that they don't read. If they see it on TV or online, they believe it. Right. And the ultra conservatives have funded Newsmax, Fox, other TV networks and radio channels that all they do is spout disinformation. Right. Rush Limbaugh was one of the biggest purveyors of that. He lies as much as Trump. Trump, how many 10,000, 13,000 lies he did the last time he was in office? And the regular media lets him get away with it. Yeah. When you saw Biden stumble somewhere, oh my God, it was the leading story. Trump did that the other day, and unless you go look online, you don't know about it. They don't focus on, if you've ever tried to listen to him speaking, he does what they call word salads. He just throws words out. They have no continuity. He has the intelligence, I would say, of maybe a 4-year-old.
You're being generous there.
Yeah, he has such a narcissistic, ego-driven personality. Right. He's the smartest. He knows better than anybody. And yet, you listen to him, I wouldn't let him run anything.
Right. You know, it's true. He has such a, well, he is a narcissist and he's running a dictator playbook. I mean, I would say anybody and this is going to be hard and I'm going to piss some people off, but I don't care. Read Mein Kampf. I'm sure he studied it, right? He knows how much power dictators can produce, and mostly because they demand adoration from their people. And I think Trump dreams, and we're going to see that on Saturday for his birthday. This, as Deb mentioned, this horribly expensive waste, fraud, and abusive display of power and American money doing this military parade. He said that in his first election or his first term that he was down in with Kim Jong Un and saw a military parade, and he so wanted that, But I'm sure half, or if not more than that, of the people who are kneeling to that dictator are saying, "I hate this fucking guy." But Trump doesn't care, as long as the display is there, it's there. And Deb, you had a comment. Would you go ahead?
Yes. One of the things, and I want to piggyback off of you and Gil, is that we can, with the education piece and the, if you want to call it fake news or whatever, we saw that in the election when I think his name was, is it Steve Miller or Scott Miller? And the other gentleman
Steve Miller,
went to
the
the,
self-loathing.
the transgender, and saying that, and they printed this out in Spanish. The Spanish radio stations put this
And Mark
out.
Meadows, I'm sorry. It was
Right.
Mark Meadows too.
And said that the Biden and his administration were forcing young men to get sex changes in order to, I can't remember what all it was. Well, I'll have to read back on that, Stacy, but they put that information out and they dispersed it to all of our Hispanic communities. And coming from, a strong Latino family, whatever your father or your grandfather says is what you do. So none of those people were going to go against what the patriarchs were saying because they thought what everything that Trump was saying and was doing was true. So we lost a lot of votes on that piece as well. I mean, you have to look at Latino heritage, Latino history. If you go against the grain, if you go against your family, you're shunned. And so those people, the family, the fathers and everything, had control over what was going to happen. I mean, the Latino men, I couldn't believe it. They wouldn't vote for a black woman, but yet they'll vote for a gentleman who your family's the first to go out when Trump gets in there and get deported. We have a group
There was
up
a
here.
lot of regret.
We have a group up here, Latinos for Trump. And I'm like, do you not understand that you'll be the first ones going? I mean, I watched the movie Mi Familia the other day. And, Jennifer Lopez's character was born in the United States, but they shipped her back to the middle of Mexico. And by God, she walked all the way back with her little boy, Chucho. So, I mean, but that's happening now. And it's crazy. So,
Yeah.
sorry, I just wanted to make sure that we got that
Nope.
education piece out and an example of what
You're
the
exactly
Republicans
right.
did, and it was wrong.
Yeah, I remember that piece. It came out and it was horrible. It went into a descriptive of about how trans people, about the surgery, what happens during the surgery. And it was all Democrats' fault that this happens. They're forcing boys to have sex with men. They're forcing boys to become girls. It was just an outrageous piece. And we, Latino groups came together and called a press conference and we said, this is bullshit. This is a tactic. But I knew that and then when we found out that it was from Mark Meadows and
Steve Miller.
Steve Miller, I said this is a test. They're doing something, and we saw it in this last campaign. What was one of their more prominent ads for Gabe Evans for Trump was that Kamala wanted to give medical care to trans people who are in prison. So they used that. They used that study. But Gil, I want to ask you because it seems to me the Republicans play the long game. They're looking ahead. I mean, we saw this Project 2025. I don't believe it was written in a year or two. I mean, we have seen Republicans, and especially people who are bigoted or KKK and, part of any of those groups, Proud Boys, they look into the future. They look 10 years and say, okay, we're going to start now this underground project that, put the infrastructure in. And then we hope to take a seat or many seats by, say, year 2030. Why do Democrats not strategize? That's one of my frustrations with Democrats is that we always feel like we're putting out a fire because we come a little late to the game. Why do you think Democrats just live in the here and now when Republicans are really strategizing? I will say good at strategizing.
I would agree with you, Stacy. They are excellent. They have put in judges 10, 20 years ago, conservative judges, Heritage Foundation. They're the ones that created the Project 2025, and it's been probably 20 years in the making. And one of the things was to also take over state legislatures. Unfortunately, the Democratic Party, I say, is very short-sighted, and just instead of having a grand strategy from the top down, I hate to use it, but there was back in the 1929 Follies, Will Rogers, the great American Western philosopher, was asked what political party he believed in. He says, well, I'm a Democrat. Let me back up. I'm not a member of any organized political party. I'm a Democrat. And unfortunately, that continues. The Democratic Party is so fractured. Everybody wants to be in the lead. Everybody wants to be El Jefe. And we don't strategize. We don't play well with others. It's like the old analogy of the lobsters in the lobster tank. One lobster's just barely getting ready to crawl out of the tank, and the other lobsters pull them back down. They don't want anybody to get ahead. I would have to say within the Democratic Party, that's the issue. Nobody wants to see anybody get more than what they're getting. Right. Centralists against the progressives, against labor, against the minorities. Everybody is used against each other. They keep saying, well, they're taking your piece. In the meantime, the powers that be are taking the whole cake. And we're fighting for crumbs.
Right. Good point.
It has frustrated me for so long. But some of it has to do also with an unfortunate characteristic within the Hispanic population. Willie Velasquez, years ago, who created Southwest Voter Registration Education Project, is now called, I believe it's called Southwest Voter, said our people will come out to vote for El Presidente, but they don't come out to vote for school board or city council. We have to create a culture of civic participation, that it's the second Tuesday in November, we got to go vote.
Right. Every year.
And every year, and not just when it's for the president. And we have to learn to communicate and educate our people better. We do voter registration, but we don't do the education part, as Willie said. Unfortunately, Willie passed away many years ago, but he was very dedicated in his efforts to lift the Hispanic population where it should be. Back in the 70s, there was a Time magazine article, and on the cover it said the sleeping giant. And it was about the Hispanic population within the United States, that it was going to create a huge effort within the Hispanic population to get more Hispanic elected officials and change policy for the better. Well, our sleeping giant is still asleep. It wakes up every now and then it goes back to sleep.
Right. Get up. No more siesta.
I'll have to agree with Bill on that too,
like you said, wake up. We got to go to work. And our people, we work damn hard, but we don't put that same effort into voter registration. We don't get our people to understand and be educated that they have to improve their lot life so it can improve their children's lot life.
Right.
And we have to improve education. Our young people drop out, not in high school, but in the 8th grade. They start dropping out in the 8th grade.
Mm-hmm.
They decide they want to go to work. They don't want to get educated. They can get a good job over here, or they have to go to work to help the family, and they got to go pick sugar beet or chop cotton or pick strawberries to help the family.
Right.
Well, we have to get them to understand you help the family by get that damn high school diploma, and then either you can go to college if you want. You want to become an electrician or a plumber or a steel worker, that's good too. There's electricians that make 6-figure salaries.
Right.
And we need to see that. We need to see not only doing the work, but also creating the businesses. You see that in Greeley, not just electrician. Mita's auto body. Well, we need to now have them own corporations.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And we need to look to the sky and get them to dream and educate them as to how they're doing it. Maria Gonzalez in Commerce City has a nonprofit called Adelante, and their focus is teaching, especially first generation Mexicanos, how to run a business, how to organize a business, what the permitting system is like, how to get through that bureaucracy, and also how to become a citizen. So we need more, and your nonprofits do a lot of that same work. Well, we need to expand that. Unfortunately, the Republicans, approximately 10, 15 years ago, created an organization called Libre, and it was funded by the Koch brothers. And they went into Texas and they went into Florida and ingrained themselves in the community, teaching the same things that Maria is teaching now. But their focus was to, not only as they're teaching to become citizens and how to create a business, but also to become a Republican.
Right. Recently I just saw a commercial that it's actually a political run Republican base that did that. We're going to teach you how to start a business. We're going to teach you all of these things. And there again, they're 10 steps ahead and we struggle to just keep the pace. Deb,
Well,
do you
see,
have something to?
yeah, and see, Stace and Gail, that's what's most important about CD8 then, coming back around. That's what's
Yes.
most important about coming back around is that we're not waiting till, 3 or 4 months before the election. We're starting now to make sure that our Latino voices, the voices of the constituents in CD8 are heard. Because we're never proactive, we're reactive as part of our party. Like you guys were saying, they've got a game plan for 10 years. Well,
We're reactive. I'm sorry. We're reactive and we fight each other. So we're not
right.
only fighting political opponents, we end up fighting each other, which
Right.
is
So that's why
stupid.
now Gil and I are going to be actively, working in CD8 so we can make sure that when election time comes, that we're not just going to say, oh, here, you're important now, 2 months before, you're important now, 2 years before the election. Your voice is important now. This is why you need to get out there and vote. This is why you need to go out there and let your voice be heard so we can make sure that you know who's going to be your representative. I know that these guys are going to have, like I said before, the 5 of them, 6 of them, 7 of them, whoever we have got to look at each other and say, who's going to be the best one to beat Gabe so we can educate our community on, okay, come election day, come that Tuesday in November, you need to get out there. Whether we have to go out there and drive them to the polls, get them their mail-in ballot, do whatever we need to do, but to make sure that they do get out there. And we're not going to start, like I said, 3 months before the election, oh, your vote counts now, and then forget about them for the other year and a half. It's now. Now is the time. Now is when we get our stuff together. Now is when we and I'm going to say this as the Democrats in CD8, because I can't speak for the other congressional districts or what it is. Gil and I have a purpose. We have a priority. We were elected to represent the constituents of CD8, and we're not going to sit back and say, let's see what everybody does. No, we are going to have an active role in making sure that we get our constituents out to vote.
Right. I appreciate that. Yes, we need to really push and hit the ground running. Right now, the demagogue in Washington seems to be doing a fast track to fascism, especially with all his military orders against unconstitutional military orders to be against people. Yeah, it's a sad situation. Right now, we've got at least 6 people. Have all of these people followed all the rules? Are they officially in the race that you know of?
She's talking about letters of
As
intent, I
chairman of
think,
the
Bill.
8th Congressional District, candidates have to submit a letter of intent to me. The only one that has followed through with that was Representative Brusnell. And I spoke with former Representative Caraveo and told her that she needed to send me a letter. I have not been able to get a hold of the others and let them know that without a letter of intent, that technically they're not on the Democratic ballot. The only one that would be on the ballot right now would be Representative Brusnell.
Okay.
So it's a matter of education of even for our candidates.
Right. So they could go out, raise money, but and publicize, but they're not officially a running candidate. Is that correct?
Correct. The only one is Representative Brusnell.
Well, take warning, candidates. This is your warning. Hopefully you see this. Get off your butt and get that in.
Yeah, they're so busy raising money and putting out ads, out checks, but they're forgetting to do the basics. And the basic is you got to send a letter of intent to me officially declaring that you're going to run. So they need to get a letter to me as soon as they can.
Okay.
Representative Caraveo, I did pass that message on to her, but I have not been able to get a hold of Representative Byrd or State Treasurer Young or Amy Baca Ohlert, who's the CEA president. I've contacted some people that know them and let them know that they need to tell their candidates they need to give me a letter.
Yeah.
And it's the old-fashioned way, through snail mail.
Interesting. So they can't send you an email. They got to actually submit a written request.
I would prefer a written request versus email because you never know what's going on with AI.
Right.
So I prefer a hard copy.
Okay. So yeah, we've got a little circus going here. I will say, and then I'll give you guys an opportunity to kind of close up. I'm a little frustrated with Washington at this point because I know that they have flown a couple of people out there who are claimed to be running in this race to interview them and to kind of support them in this race. Well, Washington doesn't know what's going on here. They don't talk to the real people. I mean, I'm talking Democrat Washington, not Trump. Screw him. But the people here, the constituents, because they look at data, faceless, nameless data to drive their facts, and it failed for them. It failed last time because they were giving shitty advice to try to bridge. Bridging is important, but there's a way to do it. And the one way not to do it is to abandon your basic Democrat principles and making votes for Republicans on that. That's a horrible strategy because you lose your base. And so there is a way to bridge without throwing the baby out with the bathwater on key Democrat principles. So we have all of these people running, and Washington wants to choose who we have. I disagree. Personally, want to get out and talk to people and let the people choose who is best to beat Gabe Evans. I mean, yes, we have to have some important strategy because we may be back in Jim Crow laws by then. If Trump has his way with this, he runs to when Mama says no, he goes to Papa, who is the Supreme Court. And so hopefully, they'll get their heads out of their asses and realize that they too took an oath to the Constitution. And Deb, I'll let you speak, and then we'll go to Gil, and then we'll close up this wonderful discussion. Deb, do you have any? Have you and Gil talked about any strategies to have people decide?
Gil and I will be putting our CD8 team together here so we can talk about that. But Stacy, I'm here to tell you right now that the DCCC is not going to pick this candidate. They can give advice to whoever they want to whatever candidate that they seem fit. If they want to put money behind them, go ahead. But CD8 is not going to be picked by Washington. I'm here to tell you that right now. Gil, I'm adding you in this, and if you don't agree, go ahead and say, but we are going to work our damnedest to make sure that we get the best representation. At this point, like I said, it's about who can beat Gabe Evans and who is going to represent our community. Would I have wanted it to be a Latino or a Latina? Yes, I would have. But we need to, at this point in time, and like you said, we're in a crisis right now. It's got to be the best person, male or female, to represent the constituents of CD8. Skin color, whatever language and everything, that's great and everything. That's great. But now is the time for all of us to pull together to pick that person who, again, like I said, is going to represent CD8. We have to take it back. Like Gil said, when the very beginning, when we all were out there testifying, when we were doing, you yourself testified 9 times. I can't remember how many times Gil did. I did 4 times. It hurt when we lost. And when people were telling us that CD8, we couldn't win it, and we did. We need them to represent everyone in CD,
Right.
And take heed of the number of Latinos and Latinas that do live here, and make sure that you don't disregard them. Listen to your base. Listen to that. I think having conversations with some of the people that are running, and making sure that they know that Gil and I, CD8, or the chairs of CD8, aren't going to be quiet. We're not going to be told what to do. We're going to do what's going to be best for our community members and our constituents. And that's my vow to the people of CD8. I was elected for a reason, to represent this, and that's what I'm going to do.
Great. I appreciate that. I mean, I know personally, and I will own this as I say it. I think our state chair is worthless. He's not going to help. He's not going to help this. Or at least at very best, his strategy is shitty. Gil, so Deb talked about making sure that we talk to people so that Washington doesn't pick for us. Uh, you know, experience is important. Experiences in life, in politics. But I personally feel that some inexperienced people have jumped into this race. And I am afraid of that. I'm afraid of their inexperience because Washington will eat you alive. But I really fear that inexperience will set us up for a failure. But what in the end, as Deb said, identity is one thing, but your real identity is the way that you vote and the way that you support your constituents. It seems to me right now with Gabe Evans being lockstep with Trump would be there's a lot to use against him, but we got to get that systemic racism out of our communities. I really feel like the systemic racism has Latinos trapped in thinking, well, my vote doesn't count. I'm Latino. Who's going to listen to me? This is for white people, but that's the most frustrating bullshit that I ever encounter is that attitude. And so, Gil, how do you feel from your mouth? What are the plans for CD8 to avoid some of the pitfalls?
Well, I would agree with you that DNC, which is Democratic National Committee, they don't know what's going on west of the Mississippi. They don't care till 1 month before the election. Historically, we've seen that. I mean, back in 1992, I worked on Bill Clinton's campaign, and we had a huge Latino motivation to get Latinos out to vote. Now, we did have a little bit of a bumper that helped us was Federico Pena had just recently been elected in Denver, so we still had some of that enthusiasm. And we turned out the gente for Bill Clinton, and he took this state. He was the first Democratic presidential candidate to win Colorado since Lyndon Baines Johnson in 1964. And then I went back to D.C. with some people that I worked with, and this person was from Texas, and we had a proposal for the Democratic National Convention that we would form a consulting group and we would contract with them for $2 million to organize Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, the lower half of California, and Colorado. There was about 6 of us, including a statistician at that time, which was at that time cutting edge technology. And the DNC powers that be said no, they couldn't afford it. And yet they wasted money on consultants back east. And the next presidential year, Bill Clinton lost Colorado. So there is a systemic racism within the Democratic Party as well. But it's in all political parties. They look at our people and say, oh, they'll turn out to vote. All we got to do is feed them bullshit, and they'll turn out. Well, the Democrats do a last-minute rush to get our people out and feed us bullshit. And the Republicans do it long term. And they have a TV star right now and then a multi-billionaire feeding us. So we've got to change the game. We've got to I would propose that we have to have some candidate forums up in Weld County and also in Adams County so people can come and listen to the candidates and not do the so-called debates that they have on TV. Those aren't debates. Those are a dog and pony show. But have actual debates where they have to answer questions for issues that are crucial to the 8th Congressional. Now, there's some issues that go across congressional districts and across states. Education, employment, housing, healthcare, those cross all lines. But within the 8th Congressional, we've got agriculture that's very important, not only for the production of food, but also for employment. We need that. We need the public education factor and also the healthcare. Like I said earlier, 72,000 people within the 8th Congressional are on Medicaid.
Right. That's huge.
And we need to get the people come to those forums and listen to what's going on. So they'll become educated at what Gabe Evans is doing and not believe his bullshit ads, especially his police ads, police state ads, as I call them, because he's surrounded by police. Well, he's supporting a felon in the White House who pardoned 1,500, 1,600 people that attacked police.
What an oxymoron, right?
Yeah. How does he equate supporting the police to supporting a man who pardoned people that attacked policemen that were trying to protect the Capitol and, in my opinion, protect democracy.
Yeah.
So we got to get meetings and forums, because I agree with you. We don't want those consultants to come out from back east and tell us how to do things.
Right.
I've seen that happen way too many times, and then they come out here with bullshit, and it's caused Democrats to lose races. It caused Mark Udall to lose his seat. I saw there was back when Weld County was in the 4th Congressional, I saw a Democratic candidate who he was behind a month before the election. The Democratic National Committee, through the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, told their support. They called the candidate's campaign manager, who was being paid for by the DCCC, and said he's going to lose, go to Nevada. And he did. And our candidate lost by double digits.
Wow.
I mean by like 20%. He got whooped.
Yeah. And that's kind of how I've seen in the past. And the state operates, they're not going to put money into races that might be important. They decide who wins the favor, and that is exactly why I ran I was a Greeley City Council member, and I lost my reelection by 15 votes, and I am in a red area. If that does not tell you that every vote matters, then nothing will. I mean, 15 votes. I could be in the waiting room at the doctor's office and thought, if all of these people had voted for me, I would have won that election. I mean, that's how small, to give you a visual, that number is. But, the state will pick, really, I think, biasly, who they feel will maybe be good for them and not so much the people. But we've got lots of education to do, Deb and Gil. And I want to say that let's not forget that there were Republicans who showed up to walk for Harrison Walls. We got to identify those people who knew the danger that was coming, and now they're seeing it. They came out before that, because they had an idea, and now they know for sure that Trump is a fascist dictator, and we need to save our democracy. So there needs to be some outreach to those people, some independents, because I think the base will vote Democrat either way. But now we need to get the base up off their butts and get out and help us to really find the people that love democracy and will not, regardless of political affiliation, don't want to lose it under Trump. So thank you. This has been a great discussion today, and I know we could go on, and maybe I'll have you back as we go, especially when we're having some forums and stuff. I think this would be a great place to kind of help get the word out. But I want to thank you, Gil Reyes and Deb Suniga, for being on my show today, and thank you for all the work that you've done in the past for CD8. You were reelected for a good reason. And I look forward to personally, as a constituent, working with you and give you any assistance that you need to be successful again in CD8.
Thank you, Stacy. Thank you for having us on.
Sure.
Hopefully,
Thank you.
we can share this with everyone around. And if anybody out there wants to help in CD8, they can reach out to Gil and I. My email is deb.suniga, Suniga, @gmail.com. Just shoot us an email. Let us know, hey, I want to walk a door. I want to, make a phone call. I can text message. I can host anything. That will help us out. Like we've stated throughout this podcast, it takes a village. It takes boots on the ground. I don't care if you live here in CD8 or like some people came all the way from, Castle Rock, Colorado Springs, Durango. Come and walk. Come and help us. We got to take CD8 back and defeat Gabe Evans.
Yeah, we got to round him up. Gil, do you have any closing remarks?
I would agree. We need to do education. We need to do motivation. We got to get into the polls.
Right.
And I would agree with you. We have to do broad base. It has to be the disenfranchised Democrats, but also the independents, also Republicans who are shocked and now all of a sudden realize what's going on is also affecting them.
Mm-hmm.
Starting to see people who were Trump supporters all of a sudden realize that his cuts are going to affect them. So now they're going, my God, what the hell did I do? So we need to channel into them and let them know that if you want to get things changed, you need to change the Congress. We need to change the Congress. We need to change the Senate. because we can't vote for president for another 3 years.
Right.
But 18 months, we can change the Congress.
Right. And make sure it was only 2 years that
Correct.
he's doing damage.
Yeah, and then there's only a year before we have our primary where we select who is our nominee for Congress. So we need to get the education out there, and I'm sure the candidates are going to be putting out their information, but we got to remind people it's not just the candidate, it's the issues, it's what the Democratic Party stands for. It's like my grandparents were all immigrants. They all, with the exception of one grandparent, he became an American citizen because he was undocumented. And he showed me his papers when he took the test to become an American citizen. And he said, as an American citizen, you have a duty to vote.
Yes.
And then you have a duty to vote Democrat because Mr. Roosevelt helped a man take care of his family.
Right.
And we got to let people know that Democrats help people take care of their family, whether it's a single parent family. We have to get that message out, and that doesn't matter who you love, doesn't matter how you identify yourself. The Democratic Party will support you.
Right.
And we just need to get that information out between now and in November of 2026.
Well, it seems that the two of you won't be sleeping until December of 2026, along with many of us. And in closing, I just want to say, you mentioned that we need education and motivation. And if people open their goddamn eyes right now, you're going to get a boatload of education and motivation when you see we are losing our Constitution. And everything Trump is doing is pointing in that direction. He wants to destroy it. He wants to become the Constitution according to Trump. And we can't let that happen. So I wish you both the best of luck. Reach out to me if there's anything I can do to support you, because I don't want to be without freedom. I mean, we talked about President Johnson, and he was gruff, probably a racist, but he created the Great Society, that gave us civil rights. He sent out National Guard for good reason, to protect civil rights. Lots of good things happened in his era. So we need to get back to the Great Society, get rid of this MAGA barfing bullshit, and get back to the Great Society. So thank you both for being on. I look forward to hosting you again. I know we have so much to talk about. Good conversation. And again, reach out to me if there's anything I can do.
Will do. Take care,
Well,
Stacy.
You too.
thank you.
Bye-bye.